Hey guys, it's Jess with Rop Family Farm. We thought we'd invite you back to the orchard today to take you through the next step in the process that we do for caring for our fruit trees, whether they're apples, pears, plums, and so on. And that is called thinning. So pretty much what thinning is that is culling or eliminating some of the fruit so that instead of having lots of small fruit, we have big, quality, juicy fruit to eat and to preserve for winter. So your fruit trees will store up energy in their roots over winter and then use that energy for the next year to do a couple things. First and foremost, grow fruit. It then will use it for growing leaves and new branches like these branches you see here, which some of those will get pruned back for the next season. And then to grow fruiting buds, which will bear your fruit the next year. So if we go and let's say we have 5 apples and we go and eliminate 3 of those apples and leave only 2 apples. The tree had energy for 5 apples, and by eliminating 3 of them, it's gonna put more energy into those remaining 2 apples, giving us bigger, better, higher quality fruit. That will also then put more energy into the fruiting buds, which is your fruit crop for the next year. So what this does is it helps with a problem that's called biennial bearing. And what biennial bearing is one year you may have a lot of fruit like we have here, and then the next year you may have a 4th or a 5th of that fruit on your tree. And it's nothing you did wrong, it's just the way that the tree stores and produces and then uses energy for the next year. So by going through and eliminating some of this fruit, it's gonna have more energy to put into next year's fruit and evening out that biennial bearing. So what we're gonna do with thinning is we just go through, there's probably about 50 to 60 apples on this one branch here. And we're gonna go and cut those back to probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 or 12 apples. Pretty much the gist of it is, you have a bunch, a cluster of apples here, which were flowers, also referred to as a truss, and they on average will give you 5 to 6 apples. And we're gonna go and cut each of those bunches, those clusters of apples back to 1, maybe 2 apples. And then we're gonna leave each of those at least 6 to 8 inches apart. So as you can see, we're gonna go from a lot of apples on here to about 10, 11, 12 apples on here. But what that's gonna do is give us that bigger, higher quality fruit. And also, it's gonna help save this branch. Because if we left all these apples on here and they grew, they're gonna grow together, it's gonna get heavy and it's gonna pull down and wanna break that branch, which then that's a loss for next year. So by lightening that load, it's going to help prevent that. So, we're gonna go ahead and get started on this and go through, and I'm gonna explain a little bit as we cut them back and show you kind of what this looks like before and after. So let's get started. So, as you can see in this cluster, this bunch of apples here, what we're gonna do, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 apples, and we're gonna cut this one back. Looking at this, I have another bunch here, so we're gonna cut this back to 1. So what you wanna do is, typically this center apple is when it's blooming in flowers, is what it's called a king bloom. And that typically is gonna be your first bloom, so it's gonna be the biggest apple. In this case, it looks like this side guy right here is our biggest apple. So we're gonna go ahead and cut these back, eliminate all these except this large one, because that's the one that's gonna give us the most potential for growth. If we were at another spot and we had a lot of apples that were the same size, what we're gonna do is we're gonna look for anything that's damaged or diseased and definitely cut those off first and then leave that. So let's go ahead and cut this guy back. We're just gonna take our pruning snippers here, which is just a nice set of Corona pruning snippers that works real well. And we're gonna go ahead and carefully cut all these back and leave this one. So now instead of 5 little fruit, we're gonna have a nice one, big fruit on here. So the next step would be to normally, like I said, is we're gonna go and do the same like here, this one. See the king bloom here on this one is definitely the biggest. We're just gonna go ahead and cut those back, leaving that one. These are a little close, but since there's enough on here, I'm gonna go ahead and leave these. But typically, we want to leave a cluster about every 6 to 8 inches apart. So if we look here, we can see that, we have our next cluster here, one down here. We're gonna go ahead and just clean this up and space it how we want, and then we'll show you what it looks like. All right, so as you can see, we went and eliminated quite a few apples off of there. So let's take a look. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, one around here, 11, 12, and then 13, 14. I left 2 up there. As you get further up and you get closer to the trunk where the branches are bigger and the trunk is bigger, you can leave a little bit more fruit there as it can support it. But we eliminated some off the very end here. So as you can see, we've got a nice spacing, and that fruit will be nice, big, healthy fruit. Now, one thing that I wanted to make sure and tell you was when you're cutting these bunches, if you come in here and take a look, if you had a spot here where I needed to eliminate a whole set of apples because I had too many bunches too close, you want to cut each apple off individually and not just cut off the whole fruiting spur. Because what happens if you do that, you're going to kill that fruiting spur and you won't get fruit there the next year. So just eliminate each apple. I know it's a few more steps, but just eliminate each one and go from there. So yeah, so now we've got this done. This is what each branch is gonna look like, and each branch is different. So we're gonna go ahead and do the rest of this tree and then work our way to all the other trees. But I highly encourage you guys to do this on your trees. It takes a little bit of time. It feels like you're wasting something, you know, all those apples, but it is gonna benefit your tree and your fruit in the long run. Like I said, you're gonna have bigger, healthier, higher quality fruit, and you're going to eliminate that biannual bearing. So you'll get a more consistent amount of fruit and a healthier tree every year. One more thing I forgot to mention, now that we've got this tree all done, is the best time of year that you want to do this is right after bloom, when you start getting little fruit. So if you look, I mean, some of these are done now, but this is a good size fruit here, and you don't want it to get too much bigger. You can wait for it a little bit bigger, and typically in June, we'll get what's called a June drop, and that is when the fruit starts to get big, anything that's crowded will just naturally fall off. But I like to do it when they're small. As soon as those buds are off and they start to form that little piece of fruit, because it's all about saving and utilizing energy. So the less energy that goes into growing these, the more energy that's saved for the tree and the rest of the processes. So get out in your garden, get out in your orchard, do this, and just remember, you can't make mistakes. If you're gonna learn through this process, and if you don't like what you did, then the next year you can always fix it. So thanks for joining us here on the farm. We'll see you guys next time.